little bit of crimson in it, to be honest, tiniest bit, and yellow ochre again.
Okay.
Yellow ochre. A tiny bit
But
of...
you could do it without, you could do this one with Prussian if you wanted to.
I'm having a go with ultra first, and
Okay.
ultra and raw sienna.
So it's like yellow ochre or you know, the raw sienna.
Yes.
And then a tiny touch of crimson, you know, the vermilion, not the alizarin.
Oh, I love this colour, but it's not in the picture.
You what?
Produced a beautiful colour.
Well, I think it, you know, the thing is, you can mix the colours separately, but when you start putting one colour on top of another, it's that's what matters, not really what you pick. I mean, these are lovely, but I probably will end up having to adjust them when I put them in the painting. And you do have to remember that, you know, watercolour is sort of overlaying transparent washes, one on top of the other. It isn't that you can necessarily mix the colour just like that and on your palette and think, okay, got all my colours mixed now I'm just going to fill them in. It doesn't work like that.
Yours is so much paler than mine's coming out, and clearer.
Mine isn't that colour at all, no matter what I do.
And I've got the same.
Well, if you find it isn't right, wash it off with your paper towel and start again, and start with ultramarine or start with Prussian blue.
Okay, I'll start with the Prussian this time.
Start with Prussian, then put a tiny bit of alizarin crimson and see if you get this. This is what I call eggshell blue.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful, but it may, when I put it on here, I know I'm going to be putting some of this brownie mix over the top of it. Or right, now I just wanted to mention a couple of things with this picture before we launch into painting. If you look at where the little piece of green land is on the left here, and directly in front of it, it looks as though he's deliberately left some white paper, and that expresses the spray from the sea. Can you all see that?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so you're going to have to, when you get to there, you're going to have to make sure your board is at an angle of 30 or 40 degrees, and the color, when you put the paint, when you have to let that greeny piece of land dry before you do this, which is the sea, and deliberately make yourself leave a little bit of the white paper showing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one thing to bear in mind. The other thing is, it does occur white, and I would say almost white paper, if you like, here, where he's indicating the you know, the foam on the wave, a little bit along here, and certainly just down here on the edge of the water's edge where it hits the sand. I think he's used what we call a dry brush technique. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So I thought we could just do a little bit, first of all, of dry brush technique. So if you turn your paper over, or you have it so you've got, I mean, you can do it on here if you want to, but I'm going to do it on the other side. I know I've still got a bit of colour on my brush from when I mixed this bluey green colour, and I'm not going to dip my brush into the paint. I'm just going to see what's left on the brush. So yes, it works. If I do this, can you see how, because it's not a full brush load of color, can you see this, or is it, do I need to go in closer?
Yes.
I don't know if it's quite in focus. There we are. Can you see how the texture of my paper and the fact there's not much paint on my brush is creating a sort of speckles of white coming up through the colour. Can you see that?
Yes.
Would you all like to try a bit of that, please?
So we're drying, making sure we're in a dry brush, or
No, Shelley, it should be having, you don't put your brush into the paint, but you should still have, if you haven't washed your brush off and left it like I did with the last colour I was mixing still on the brush, which was that last colour we made, that this one here, eggshell blue. I had some still left on my brush. When I pick my brush up again, I haven't washed it out, so there's still paint in the brush. If I turn the hairs of my brush over, there's still paint left in the brush head, and I can get this lovely sort of uneven, dragged feeling across on the paper.
What size brush is that?
It's a 9.
Right, thank you.
okay.
I put paint on my brush and then squeezed it out with my fingers.
Well, do whatever you need to do to get this dry brush technique, yeah?
It worked.
Does it work, Prue?
Yes, it does work. But also what's important is the granular surface of the paper.
Yes.
If it's very smooth, it might not work so well.
The back part of my paper is quite smooth. It still works. But what I found is if you paint a few lines, put the paint on your brush, paint a few lines, like somewhere on the side, and then do it.
Yes, because basically you're reducing the amount of watery pigment in your brush. That's what you're doing.
Yes. Okay.
Right?
Done that.
Could you also do it, Sue, by using a bit of paper towel and sort of tapping it on the...
I haven't, no, I don't think so. But I mean, if you try it.
I'm going to try.
Try it.
That's quite a good technique for the sand.
Oh, the paper towel technique does work. Actually, for the sand, it will work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It's quite nice.
Rainy quality.
Yeah. Now, just so to reiterate what I was saying earlier about, if you just wash your brush out now, dry it on a piece of paper towel so it's not too wet, put it into your this colour, the beigey colour, right? Just at the tip of your brush into your wild beigey colour. You don't want lots of it. And then what I would like you to do is just to paint over a little bit of that blue that you've just dragged across. Just a little bit. You don't have to do the whole thing. And see the effect of putting that colour over the blue.
Oh, it's so lovely.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at your painting, I mean, there is evidence that he has done that in places. He's overlaid one colour on top of another. It's not just a case of filling in, as I try to keep saying, Now, there's just one other thing, which is probably the crux of the matter in this painting, is this wet into wet technique, which is evasive, I would say, and probably the hardest part of watercolour, where you get something that looks watery, beautifully watery on the paper, has no cauliflowers or dry waterline edges or anything like that, looks completely effortless. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to suggest trying out, and you'll have to do this yourself and try it out. First of all, wash your brush and then have a jar of clean water handy. I always recommend 3 jars of water when you're doing any watercolour exercise, simply because it means you don't have to get up. But I know that's tricky for some people. We're going to say again on our practice piece of paper, because I want to practice it before we actually go into the painting. I want you to just get your brush in the clean water and then just starting, I want you to basically paint an area of water. It doesn't have to be, well, it can be about, I don't know, 4 inches by 4 inches, something like that. Just take water over the paper. And you won't be able to see mine because it's got no colour in it, unfortunately. But I think we'll manage.
Okay.
Right, now if you hold your paper up, because it's so warm here, the shine is disappearing rapidly off that square area where I've painted the water. I mean, it's almost dry. It's damp. If I touch it, it's damp.
Yes.
But it's not completely dry. It's not dry like the other end of the paper, which is completely dry. It feels damp.
Yeah.
I then want you to put your brush into that, that, what should we call it? The sandy colour. And I want you to imagine you're painting the sky, and I want you just to allow your brush to just do a few bits like that. Now, looking at this is quite dark at the moment. Looks quite dark, doesn't it?
Yes.
That colour I put on looks quite dark. Do
Yeah.
not go back over the wet colour, whatever you do.
Okay.
Very tempting, that.
I know it is, Yvonne. You're not to touch it.
Do we
Okay.
go on down to the bottom?
Well, as far as you'd like to take it, and then you can actually put your brush in water and just extend that end bit with just a bit of water. Okay. Did you see how I did that? So the colored bit is here with the paint, and then I just added a bit of water onto that last bit.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Now, if you hold it up to the light again, you look at it at an angle, you'll see that it should look fairly shiny. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
How many of you've got hair dryers handy?
Yeah,
One,
I do.
2, 3, 4. Okay. Get your hair dryers, and I don't want you to dry this completely, but just give it a little tiny bit of dry so that it doesn't look completely, well, it still feels damp, but it's not wet like it is at the moment. If you were outside by the seaside doing this, you would have to just be patient and let the color dry off a bit before you apply the next one. So don't dry it too much, just a little light dry, then feel it. Does it still feel damp? If it does, then that's good. Then put your brush into the darker color, the first one we mixed. And you don't want too much of it on your brush, but enough. And then I want you to just present your brush to the paper, and you can, well, it's already a bit dry, but you can actually, in fact, what we'll do is we're going to get another brush. With my other brush, I'm just going to apply some water, like we did with the drapery. Water just to the left of that colour that you put on, and allow it to fuse into it.
Okay.
Don't start pushing it around.
Say that again, please.
What?
Can you say that again, please?
Yes, get another brush, clean brush, with water on it,
Yeah.
and then paint some water to the left of the dark colour that you've just put on, like we did with the drapery last week. Not so it touches that colour, but so that it's near enough of it, and because your paper's at an angle, it pulls the colour down into it. Can you see that? That's happening on mine. It's pulling the colour down. Can you see that?
Mhm.
Yes.
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 If you want to put a few more dobs of colour in, you can. Now down the bottom here, I've got a bit of a pool of water. So I'm going to dry my clean brush and I'm just going to pick up those dobs of water off the paper.
Clean brush.
Clean brush, yes. Don't do it with the one that's got colour on it.
I think I dried mine too much.
Well, then just dampen it again with water.
Sue, it's Sally here. I've just joined, so
Hello.
I'll spend the rest of the time just looking at what you do. I won't start.
Okay, well,
but I
we
have got a book with the picture in it, so I can do it in the week.
jolly good. Well, what we did before you came in, Sally, was to mix these pretty colours.
Oh, lovely.
And we decided
okay.
that the painting essentially has got three main colours. So there's one which is this dark one here, which is
Yes.
made up of burnt sienna, ultramarine and aureolin.
Yes.
And then this more sandy colour, which is made up of yellow ochre or raw sienna, whichever you've got.
Yeah.
And a tiny weeny percentage of either ultramarine and red. But you will have to play around with it. And that was to get those sort of colours for the sky and the sand, probably, although it'll have to be adjusted for the sand, have a bit of red in it. And then finally we did this eggshell blue, which I feel he's used in this piece of land that's in the right of the background, and there are touches of it in the sky as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's made up of ultramarine, yellow ochre or raw sienna, and a tiny touch of crimson. Oh, actually, Sel did it with Prussian blue. You can use Prussian blue if you want to.
Yeah, Prussian blue.
Right,
Looks...
and the first colour, the first darker colour, what were they made of?
Burnt sienna, ultramarine, and aureolin yellow. That's the lemon yellow. Okay, again, you might have to play around with it a bit.
Yeah.
And what I was saying to the others is that, you know, you mix up colours on your and try them out on your paper, but then watercolour is about layering. So when you come to paint your landscape, you'll be layering colours on top of each other.
Yeah.
Okay. You find you have to adjust them a bit.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
what we've also done since, which you haven't, you know, we tried out a dry brush technique. And basically I said, whatever's on your brush, you can, without dipping it back into the palette, you can just drag your brush across the paper, and the texture of the paper won't take the color up, so that remains white, and then you've got the color around it, which is what he appears to have used this dry brush technique in a couple of places. He's used it where the foam of the waves are on the water, and here at the tide line and on the beach. So it's worth doing a little practice of that. And now we've just been doing some wet into wet, and all we've done so far is put the darkest color, that's that first one, over this mid sandy color. And now what I was going to say to everybody, before it gets completely dry, mine is damp, as I touch it, it's damp. I'm now going to put my brush into that eggshell blue, and I'm going to just paint some of that over the top of it. And I'm not going to move my brush around. I'm just going to drop it in. And what we did do as well, just as you were coming in, is we then take a brush with water on it, with clean water, and we actually painted just around that area with clean water, but so it didn't touch the color. And then if you hold your board up, your paper up a bit, what will happen is the wet colour will fuse into the water.
Yeah.
And you can control that obviously with how you have your paper, whether you have it flat or you have it at an angle, a 30-degree angle. Now, what I would say is don't let your paper tip backwards so that the colour runs back on itself.
Yeah.
That you don't do.
Okay.
So you do need a brush with just clean water on it for doing that second stage. And as I said, you can then go along the bottom and you can lift up with a drier brush, or my brush is now dry and clean, just lift off the watery bit at the edge. Here we have my painted bit. Now, and it's horizontal at the moment. When I'm painting it, I have it at an angle of 30 degrees. The only thing I would warn you is never let the paint or the paper go backwards. So, sometimes you get sort of anxious. You think, oh God, I better stop it running. So I put my paper backwards. You do that, the paint will run back on itself and you'll get a nasty waterline. Now here, where it's sort of drying into sort of blobby blues, before it's completely dry, you can just go over that with a paintbrush with just water on it, wiggle the brush left, from side to side, and just soften it. Just like that, and you get rid of it. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Actually, this is beautiful, this eggshell blue, because when you feather it out onto the white paper, it's so close to white, it's just lovely soft appearance. My copy, I would like you just to look at it for a minute, just from the learning point of view. It's not perfect, but what I have done, which he didn't do, is I've brought up the blue in the sky a bit. And I know I always do this, but I actually like to have a bit more colour in my sky. So I don't always stick rigidly to what I'm copying. I tend to modify things slightly. So it's all this is in mine is looking a bit blue now. I probably need to go over it with, the water's looking a bit blue. It all needs to come down a bit, so it will all have another coat of the mid brown or the that sandy color over the top of it. Okay, so there's still quite a bit to do even on this one. So I'll let you all get going with your painting. Let's see how far we get, just even with the sky. If you just get down to the horizon line painted, I think that will be enough for now. And then you can do the rest in the week in your own time without any pressure, just enjoy it.
Wet the whole of the sky?
I guess I did wet most of this before when I was working on that dark bit there, yes.
But not
I think also, Prue, I did start with a bit of blue in here, but looking at his, it's brown at the top. So, I mean, I could modify this. It's not quite right, but, I could get there. I think this is a good start. Let's put it like that.
Yes, but I mean, are we working on the left and the right at the same time?
No, I do a little bit of the light. I'd work on this lightest bit probably first, and then I build up the darker area on the right.
So leaving the left-hand side just wet, not coloured.
Well, this has got a bit of colour on it.
I think it's got a tiny bit of the blue.
Yes, tiny bit of the blue here, but at the top it looks like it's a tiny bit of the sienna.
Yes, it is. But do we wet the whole of the sky?
No, I would just wet the area where you want the colour. Don't wet all the rest because you want to keep some of it white.
No. But I don't want to have a line between my wet and worked left and then my wet and worked right.
All right, then work them together. put the blue here if you're going to put blue in, or the light mid sienna in, and then do the right hand side at the same time, in which case you'll have to put some water wherever you're going to do that, put that color.
Okay.
Remember, you can use, you know, two brushes at the same time. So, you know, the clean brush just to soften the edge so you don't have any edges on anything. And then the other brush, your main brush with the color on it.
The right hand side is so dark anyway that it won't show if the blue
No.
goes all the way across.
No.
It's almost a purpley bit in it, isn't there?
What?
A purpley bit coming out of the, well, maybe it's just my version. Coming out of the deep, that funnel coming out of the, towards the land in the middle.
Yeah, that's a wave, isn't it?
No, in the clouds.
Oh, in the clouds.
If you look at his, so the
Yeah,
top,
yeah, here.
right, and
Yeah.
that funnel, yeah.
Yeah.